Okay, we are now going to look at the brush tool and moving on down a little bit further. I have a newborn on my lap, so please excuse any funny little noises. Um, the brush tool is really helpful. I use it pretty constantly. The Blob brush tool has a slightly different purpose, but similar, so I'll review what those differences are. The paintbrush tool has pretty similar choices up at the top here as the line tool. You can, so I'll just show you kind of first off. Um, you can kind of do whatever kind of organic line that you wish, and it is going to be based on the size of your stroke because it's essentially a line. What I want you to see is as I'm increasing the stroke, this blue line remains static, but it is growing on either side of it. And for the stroke, you cannot move where that stroke is because it's only a line, it's not a shape. So you can manipulate that. Of course, you can manipulate the brush type. So, you might want, again, if you have not yet explored that before, to come over here and look at the different options, and you will get, many more choices for what you can, mess around with, really. And some of these, won't let you change what they look like. You'd have to be on a really normal brush tool in order for some of these ones to show themselves, and that's even just going to be based on the type of shape that you've built. So, just explore, look around, see what's at your available to you. And you can also, under Window, you can bring up brushes. You might want to have this open to you because if you want to alter a pre-existing brush, you can't choose it from here, unfortunately. But once you can always drag a brush from a specific brush library over to your basic set of brushes, and then you can modify it. So this one, for example, if I double click on it, it's set at 6. I could reduce that size, and you'll get some different things available to you. So I do recommend modifying some of these ones. If you like something but it's not quite perfect, just know that once you move that brush type or the look of it over to your brush window, then you can start to manipulate far more heavily. And generally it does keep the ones in here when you have touched them or used them, but you can also drag them in like I showed you before. So, you can look at the symbols. Sometimes those will give you a pretty good idea of what the brush or tip, there's other types of tips, what they'll look like. But you can get some pretty interesting effects just based on the brushes. So, think about what type of brushes you've used or maybe would like to use out in the real world and see if you can find its equivalent here. So, again, a lot of that's just going to be up to you messing around with things and testing them out. But the big difference between a brush tool and a blob brush tool is, alright, so we've got a shape here. Now remember that before, this is a line, right? The blob brush tool creates a shape. I'm going to reduce the color here so you can actually see it a little bit better. So you can see here, that is an outline. It is not a line in the middle of the shape, which is just a line. It is an outline, which is an actual shape. So this is a complete shape. Now, if for some reason, after you make a line, you're like, oh man, I wish I would have used, let's say like the blob brush tool, because I actually want this to be a thick line now that is able to be edited, or you want to add a stroke to that. Now, you're not out of luck. What you can do is you can go up to Object and you can expand it, and it's not reversible. Once you do this, it's done. You might want to keep a copy of this before you do that if you're unsure of yourself. You can do OK, and then again, if I take the opacity down, you can see that blue outer line quite a bit better. And now it's a shape. So you can go from a line to a shape, but you can't go backwards. Unless, of course, you've just done it, then you can just do a few undos to get backwards. You can have quite a few of those actually for Illustrator. I don't remember what the final number is, but I've done quite a few. Now, the thing is, after you have it into a shape, you can actually add a stroke to it. So I'll change the color here so we can see it. And the stroke is really, really thick on this shape. So there we go. Now we can see the inside and the outside. And now that it is a shape with a stroke, you can manipulate where that line goes. Does it go to the outside or does it go to the inside? Which that does not work. Probably outside or inside. And then to complicate matters even further, this is something you can do on any shape, by the way, but you can make more and more complicated situations happen. So let's say that you're like, well, I want to add a stroke to that stroke. What if I want like 3 layers? You can. If you select it, you can do an expand appearance once more. And then there is something you'll have to do first, though. You can see that it's cut it up into a few shapes, and that's because of where the initial line was and how it adds strokes. If you would like, basically right now, it's 3 shapes. It's the gray shape, and there's 2 sections of the pink. So I'm actually going to ungroup. We didn't talk too much about grouping yet. I'll get more into it when I cover the menu items from the top, but the thing is that Illustrator likes to group things. It thinks it's being helpful. So if I want something separated, like if I only want to be able to select one or the other, sometimes it'll take multiple undos. The way that you can tell, let me go back a step here. You can see this question mark here. It doesn't know what color to show up as the fill color because there's multiple things happening. So that's a quick dead quick giveaway to the fact that it has not been properly ungrouped yet. The other way you can tell is if you're looking at your layers. You'll notice that there's a little arrow here, and these are 2 separate pieces, but it's grouped it together. So you can watch what happens here. Once I ungroup it again, you can see that these 2 are separated out. Now the black is one thing. You can see it's a separate shape, and the red is a shape. But I'm going to put an opacity layer that's quiet on there because I want you to see what's happening. So the black shape does go past this. Okay, it's sitting underneath it. And so if you wish the black shape to remain as it is, which is not as thick, then you have to do a little trick here. Actually, let me turn off the eye so you can see the pink. So this is what the pink looks like. And then this is what the black looks like. If you, actually that looks kind of cool just like that, but I'll go back and do the 100% on the red. Okay, so if I want to make the black look as a shape just as it is, and the red is shaped just as it is, and them being separate, I need to actually go to my shape builder tool and remember that it affects shapes only, not lines. So I can click and drag into those sections, okay? Click and drag into these sections, and then there's going to be some other places where I'm going to need to click and drag appropriately, anywhere where there's a new section or a closed area. And then I would also go ahead and do it on the black, and temporarily it'll turn it to red, but that's okay. You can just select it later and turn it back to whatever color you want. So now what happens is that you can have a really unique shape and it's just an outline. It's a little bit hard to do that otherwise, and that could be sitting on top of other shapes. Whoops, before you do that, did you notice that those shapes got moved? What you might want to do is go back and grab your lasso tool, and you can simply whoops, go around the entire shape, which means you've also grabbed these little guys here, and actually go back and group them again so that they move in unison, so that if you want to actually move it, it will all move together, which is a much better thing to have happen. I'm also going to move now down to the pencil and a couple of the other shapes. The shaper tool, I honestly never use it. It's meant to be like if you were using a pen tool, or I suppose you could use a trackpad or mouse, and you do something that's similar to a straight line, it'll fix it for you. It'll accept some lines, it won't accept others, but basically if I'm like, oh, wiggly, it's too wiggly, it doesn't know what to do. So you kind of have to make some somewhat okay lines And basically it straightens out your somewhat okay lines. That's its job. Again, I don't work like that, so but you might find it helpful. It's not great for building shapes though. It's great for lines, but even though it says shaper tool, it's not actually, like if I try to put some shapes together, it's not actually combining them in any way. If I zoom in here, what you're going to notice is that these are actually separate lines, which not that helpful, right? Because they need to be talking to each other. You can always grab them together and go up to Object and try to join them together. And sometimes if they're really well, or excuse me, closely placed together, they will. This one kind of did it. But I find it a little bit more of a hassle than it's worth. The next one is the pencil tool, and to be honest, I never ever use the pencil tool because the brush tool does everything the pencil can do plus more. It's sensitive. The brush tool is sensitive, so that if you were using a Wacom tablet or some sort of pen that's pressure sensitive, or that you can use as pressure sensitive, the brush tool will pick it up. The pencil does not. Smooth tool. Again, I don't really use this, but I'll see if I can make it work for me here. It basically is said to smooth out. Now this is a pretty smooth shape, so I don't know if we're going to get any real movement out of here, but it's supposed to, if there's something that's kind of wacky, it's supposed to fix it. Since mine is pretty clear, it's just kind of affecting small changes, but nothing major. Basically, it moves your points a little bit. The path eraser tool, I mean, that's one way to get rid of a few shapes, but there's also, in my opinion, the best way is just the shape builder tool. But I suppose if you had a line, that is one way to get rid of it. But I just use the eraser tool in and of itself. So again, I'm not quite sure about why some tools are chosen over others. I never use the join tool, but let's see if I can go ahead and mimic that. Oh, these are set on null, so that's not very helpful, huh? Okay. So if I use the join tool, let's see if I can get them to go together. Yeah, okay. So, that's a way. That's definitely, what I did is I went up here and told it to join under path, but that's another way to get the job done. And then I'll finish off with the eraser tool here before I move on. The eraser tool is, well, it's what it sounds like. It erases things. I actually find that the additive process of building things together is effective, but the subtractive, which is making new shapes by erasing pieces, can actually sometimes be, depending on the kind of shape you're going for, might be more effective. So you can use it for all sorts of reasons. If you want a different size eraser because you feel like the size you have is too big or too small, you double click on the tool itself. It's a rarity on this toolbar to do that, but go ahead and double click, and then you can see you can get a different size, different roundness, even a different angle. So you can really hack at something pretty well if you want to. You can also just snip right through pieces, and this makes a separate entity. Some of the other possibilities here are not my favorites. I use the eraser tool more than anything. The scissors tool, you have to have points in order to manipulate this, but basically it is capable of cutting through your shapes. You see how that did that? Well, so what I did is I had to click on one shape or one point and then the other on the other side of it, and that enabled a click through. Now, the problem here with the scissors tool in particular, I already clicked on it, I guess, so it's already undone. If I zoom in here, actually you can see it already just when I grab it and move it. Can you see that there's no end? There's no closer. That's just an open area there. That's the reason that I don't love the scissors tool. Sometimes you'll have to. If let's say that I wanted two separate colors. I'll come back to this.